The Drachnid warships appeared without warning above New Eden Colony, their obsidian hulls blocking out the binary stars that usually bathed the settlement in perpetual twilight. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the colony's defense center, watching as 37 ships, each larger than anything humanity had ever built, took up attack positions. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," Lieutenant Park announced, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. It's a demand for surrender." Sarah didn't take her eyes off the tactical display. New Eden was home to 50,000 civilians, farmers, scientists, and families who'd come to build a life on this harsh but promising world. The colony only had 3 orbital defense platforms and a handful of patrol ships. Against a force like this, conventional wisdom said they didn't stand a chance. But Sarah Chen hadn't spent 15 years defending humanity's frontiers by following conventional wisdom. "Put them through," she ordered, straightening her uniform. The air shimmered, and a holographic figure materialized in the center of the command center. The alien commander stood nearly 3 meters tall, its iridescent scales shifting colors in patterns that their xenobiologists would later identify as expressions of smug superiority. "I am Supreme Commander Vexthor of the Drachnid Empire," the alien's translation matrix produced perfect English with an oddly aristocratic accent. "Your species has expanded into space without proper authorization. Surrender your colony and submit to Imperial authority, or be destroyed." Sarah noticed how the alien's eyes kept darting to the human technology around them, barely concealing its disdain for what it clearly considered primitive equipment. That was interesting. In her experience, people who felt the need to display their superiority often did so to mask insecurity. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force," she replied calmly. "We were unaware we needed anyone's permission to settle uninhabited worlds. Perhaps we could discuss this like civilized beings." The alien's scales flashed crimson. "There is nothing to discuss. You have 1 planetary rotation to surrender. Any resistance will be met with total annihilation." The hologram vanished. "Well, that was diplomatic," Lieutenant Park muttered. "Commander, what are our options?" Sarah was already moving to the tactical station. "Did you notice how they positioned their fleet, David?" "Yes, standard orbital blockade formation." "Textbook really?" Park frowned. "Too textbook." "Exactly." Sarah pulled up the sensor data. "They're arranged perfectly, mathematically perfect. No adaptation for local conditions, no accounting for the binary star system's unusual gravitational effects." A smile crossed her face. "They're relying entirely on their technology, not their experience or intuition." She opened a channel to the colony's research division. "Dr. Patel, remember that crazy idea you had about using the binary star's interference patterns? How fast can you get it working?" The scientist's voice came back excited. "The gravity lens? It's theoretical, but, with the defense platform's power grid, maybe 3 hours. You have 2. Everyone else, listen carefully. The Drachnid think they're facing a primitive species with primitive technology. But what they don't understand is that humanity didn't get to the stars by being the strongest or most advanced." She looked at her crew, seeing the same determination reflected in their eyes. "We got here by being the most adaptable, the most innovative, and the most stubborn species in the galaxy. Now, here's what we're going to do." The next 2 hours were a blur of activity. While the massive Drachnid ships loomed overhead, the colony hummed with purpose. Civilians were evacuated to underground shelters, but not before their fabrication plants were repurposed according to Sarah's plan. The defense platforms underwent modifications that would have given their safety inspectors heart attacks, and Dr. Patel's team worked frantically to reconfigure the colony's shields in ways their designers had never intended. When Supreme Commander Vexthor's patience finally ran out 40 minutes early, he didn't bother with another demand for surrender. The Drachnid ships opened fire simultaneously, releasing a barrage of energy weapons that should have turned the colony's shields to vapor. Should have. Instead, Dr. Patel's modified shields caught the energy and, using the unique gravitational properties of the binary star system, bent it through a lens of warped space. The colony's defense platforms captured and redirected the energy, sending it back at the perfectly arranged Drachnid fleet with mathematical precision. 3 Drachnid ships exploded before they realized what was happening. 5 more followed as their own weapons' fire was turned against them. The remaining ships tried to break formation, but their textbook responses were too slow, too predictable. Signal from the Drachnid flagship, Park announced, not bothering to hide his grin. They're requesting a ceasefire. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Put them through. The hologram of Vexthor appeared again, his scales now a pale blue of shock and confusion. How? This is impossible. Your technology is inferior. Your weapons are primitive. You couldn't possibly. Supreme Commander, Sarah interrupted politely, I think we need to have another discussion about assumptions and permissions. But first, let me explain something about humans. We don't need the most advanced technology to win a fight. We just need to be creative with what we have. The first battle for New Eden was over. But as Sarah looked at the stunned alien commander, she knew that this was just the beginning. The Drachnid Empire had made a crucial mistake, they had given humanity a reason to prove just how dangerous they could be. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez had spent his entire career studying electromagnetic fields, but nothing had prepared him for the sight before him. The captured Drachnid cruiser hung in the massive research dock at Luna Base, its dark hull reflecting the harsh work lights like oil on water. Teams of scientists and engineers swarmed around it on zero-gravity platforms, looking like tiny ants against its massive scale. You have 48 hours, Admiral Hassan's hologram reminded him. The Drachnid reinforcements will arrive at New Eden by then. We need something, anything, that can give us an edge. Marcus nodded, trying to hide his exhaustion. He hadn't slept in 3 days, not since they'd managed to capture this ship during the Battle of New Eden. Commander Chen's brilliant defense had bought them time, but everyone knew the Drachnid wouldn't underestimate humanity twice. We're making progress, he replied, gesturing to his tablet. Their technology is advanced, but it's rigid. Like they stopped innovating centuries ago. They've perfected what they know, but they don't explore new possibilities. The Admiral's hologram flickered. Explain. Marcus pulled up a diagram of the Drachnid ship's power systems. Look at their energy distribution network. It's incredibly efficient, perfect even. But it can only handle one specific type of energy signature. They've optimized it so much that it can't adapt to variations. It's like they've painted themselves into a corner with their own perfection. Can we use that? A smile crossed Marcus's tired face. We already are. Dr. Patel's gravity lens trick at New Eden worked because their shields were calibrated for standard energy weapons. They never considered that someone might reflect their own fire back at them. Their technology is so advanced that they've forgotten how to improvise. He switched to another diagram. But here's the real discovery. Their quantum communication system, it's instantaneous across vast distances, but it operates on a fixed frequency. They've apparently never had to worry about anyone intercepting or jamming their communications before. The Admiral's eyes widened. Because no one they've encountered has ever been technologically advanced enough to try. Exactly. They've been the biggest fish in their pond for so long that they've lost their survival instincts. Their technology is like a beautiful mathematical equation, perfect, but inflexible. A young engineer, Lisa Wong, floated down from one of the work platforms. Dr. Rodriguez. We found something in their engineering section. You need to see this. Marcus excused himself from the Admiral and followed Lisa through the cavernous ship. The Drachnid vessel's interior was a maze of crystalline corridors and chambers that seemed to follow some alien geometry. But as they studied it longer, patterns began to emerge. Here, Lisa pointed to what appeared to be a maintenance access panel. Their repair systems are completely automated. No manual overrides, no way to improvise repairs. Everything has to be done exactly according to their protocols. Marcus ran his hand along the crystal-like surface. They've eliminated the possibility of error by eliminating choice entirely. Their technology doesn't break often, but when it does, they can't adapt, Lisa finished. During the battle, when Commander Chen's trick damaged their ships, their repair systems tried to follow standard protocols. They couldn't compensate for the unexpected damage patterns. Marcus felt excitement building despite his exhaustion. Get me everything we have on their shield frequencies. And I need access to the prototype quantum oscillators from the Ganymede project. The next 36 hours were a blur of calculations, tests, and countless cups of coffee. Marcus and his team worked relentlessly, combining human ingenuity with their understanding of Drachnid technological limitations. They weren't trying to match the aliens' level of advancement, they were looking for ways to turn it against them. It's ready, Marcus announced to the Emergency Defense Council, 12 hours before the Drachnid reinforcements were due to arrive. He held up what looked like a simple black box. We're calling it the Chaos Engine. Admiral Hassan leaned forward. What does it do? It introduces controlled uncertainty into their systems. Their technology operates on perfect mathematical principles, we're going to give them problems they can't solve. The quantum oscillators will flood their communications with random frequency shifts, while simultaneously destabilizing their power distribution networks. In English, Doctor. Marcus grinned. We're going to give their perfect machines a migraine. Their ships will still work, but nothing will work quite right. Shield frequencies will fluctuate, weapons will misalign, and their automated systems will try to follow protocols that no longer apply. How many can you make in 12 hours? With every fabrication facility in the solar system working at full capacity? Enough to outfit our entire defense fleet. But Marcus hesitated. There's a catch. The Chaos engines have to be deployed relatively close to their targets. Our ships will have to get within what the Drachnid consider point-blank range. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. So we're asking our pilots to fly right up to ships that outgun them by orders of magnitude, hoping that your device will give them a chance to survive? Yes, sir. We're asking them to do what humans do best, take an insane risk based on desperate innovation. Admiral Hassan smiled grimly. Then we better make sure it works. Because if the Drachnid think we're going to give up after one victory, they're about to learn another lesson about humanity. We don't just resist, we strike back. As Marcus watched the defense fleet being fitted with Chaos engines, he couldn't help but wonder what the Drachnid would make of this. Their perfect technology, their unshakable belief in their superiority, was about to meet humanity's greatest weapon, the ability to throw out the rulebook and rewrite it on the fly. The battle for Earth's colonies was about to enter a new phase, and the Drachnid were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the most advanced technology, it's the one who knows how to make that technology fail in the most spectacular way possible. Captain James "Ghost" O'Neill sat in the darkened bridge of the EFS Shadow Dancer, watching the massive Drachnid supply convoy through his ship's passive sensors. His stealth frigate, along with 5 others, had been trailing these ships for 3 days, hidden in the quantum wake of their own engines. It was a tactic that shouldn't have worked, except the Drachnid had never considered that someone might be crazy enough to surf the dangerous quantum turbulence their ships left behind. Status of the Chaos engines, he whispered, though there was no real need for silence in space. Old habits from submarine warfare training died hard. Lieutenant Maya Cruz checked her readings. All 6 units charged and synchronized, Captain. Dr. Rodriguez's latest upgrades are holding stable. We're ready to light them up on your command. James nodded, studying the convoy's formation. Since the disaster at New Eden and the subsequent battles where the Chaos engines had proven their worth, the Drachnid had started adapting. Their ships now traveled in tight formations, energy shields overlapping, with automated defense systems on constant alert. They were learning, but they were learning like machines, applying rigid solutions to fluid problems. Remember, he transmitted to the other stealth frigates, we're not trying to destroy them all. Hit and fade, maximum confusion. Make them see ghosts everywhere they look. A chorus of acknowledgements came back, each one barely more than a quantum whisper. On my mark, James watched as the convoy approached the gravity well of a brown dwarf star. The Drachnid always plotted the most mathematically perfect courses, which made them predictable. 3, 2, 1, execute. The 6 human ships activated their chaos engines simultaneously, emerging from the quantum wake like sharks rising from deep water. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Drachnid ship's perfect formation dissolved into chaos as their systems went haywire. Shields flickered, weapons platforms swiveled randomly, and their quantum communication network erupted with garbage data. Multiple targets painted, Maya reported, her fingers dancing across her holographic controls. Their automated defense systems are targeting their own ships. James allowed himself a tight smile. Launch disruptors, pattern Delta. Let's give them something else to worry about. The human ships released clouds of tiny drones, each one programmed to emit signals mimicking various ship classes. To the confused Drachnid sensors, it must have looked like they were suddenly surrounded by hundreds of attacking vessels appearing from nowhere. The Drachnid response was exactly what James had predicted. Their ships began firing at the phantom targets, their energy weapons cutting through empty space while the actual human vessels slipped between them. Each stealth frigate picked its targets carefully, using conventional weapons on ships whose shields had been compromised by their own allies' misfiring weapons. Supply ship Alpha disabled, one of his commanders reported. Beta and Charlie breaking formation. Their flagship is trying to coordinate a response, Maya added, but the chaos engine interference is preventing them from establishing coherent command and control. James watched as the mighty Drachnid convoy fell into disarray. These ships had probably never faced defeat in centuries of enforcing their empires will across the galaxy. But they'd never faced humans before. They'd never faced an enemy that turned their own precision against them, that fought like ghosts in the void. Second phase, he ordered. Plant the quantum beacons and prepare to fade. Small, innocuous devices attached themselves to the hulls of the disabled Drachnid ships. When they activated hours later, they would broadcast false distress signals across multiple sectors, forcing the Drachnid to spread their forces thin, investigating phantom attacks and non-existent battles. Captain, Maya's voice held a note of concern, long-range sensors are picking up multiple quantum signatures. Heavy warships, bearing down on our position. They must have been waiting in reserve. James studied the tactical display. The Drachnid were learning indeed, they'd anticipated this attack and prepared a counter-ambush. But they still thought in terms of overwhelming force, of mathematical certainty. All ships, initiate scatter protocol Omega, he commanded. Let's show them why they call us ghosts. The human frigates vanished into the quantum wake of the approaching Drachnid warships, using their own enemies' power against them once again. By the time the reinforcements arrived, they would find only disabled supply ships and confused sensor readings. The raiders would be long gone, leaving the Drachnid to wonder where they would strike next. Back in the safety of Fold space, James reviewed the battle data with his crew. They're adapting faster than expected, Maya noted, highlighting the counter-ambush strategy. Good, James replied, surprising her. That means they're starting to take us seriously. But they're still thinking like an empire, trying to solve the problem with bigger ships and better ambushes. They haven't grasped that we're not fighting a conventional war. He pulled up the strategic map, showing dozens of similar raids conducted by other stealth squadrons across Drachnid space. Each attack was small, but together they were forcing the mighty empire to commit massive resources to protect their supply lines. Resources they couldn't use to attack Earth's colonies. The Drachnid built their empire on the assumption that superior technology means automatic victory, James said to his crew. We're teaching them a different lesson, that sometimes the most dangerous predator isn't the biggest or strongest, but the one that strikes from the shadows and vanishes before you can strike back. As the Shadow Dancer and her sister ships plotted their next raid, James thought about how the Drachnid must view these attacks. Their perfect empire, built on perfect technology and perfect order, was being undone by an enemy they couldn't pin down, couldn't predict, and couldn't understand. They were learning to fear the dark spaces between the stars, where human ingenuity waited to turn their own power against them. The guerrilla war among the stars was taking its toll, not just on Drachnid ships and supply lines, but on their certainty of victory. And as any military historian could tell them, once an empire starts doubting its invincibility, the end is only a matter of time. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood before the holographic display in Earth's unified command center deep beneath Mount Fuji, watching as representatives from every human colony and nation materialized in the virtual space around her. The massive chamber, originally built as a last resort bunker, had become the nerve center of humanity's resistance against the Drachnid Empire. Ghost Fleet's latest raids have disrupted 70% of their supply lines in the Orion sector, she began, highlighting the relevant star systems. Dr. Rodriguez's Chaos engines continue to prove effective, though the Drachnid are developing countermeasures. But most importantly, Commander Chen's defense of New Eden taught us something crucial: the Drachnid can be beaten. They can be beaten, General Santos of the South American Alliance agreed, but they're still coming. Our long-range arrays have detected their main fleet. 300 capital ships, at least twice that many support vessels. They'll reach Seoul in 10 days. The chamber erupted in overlapping conversations. Admiral Tanaka let them talk for a moment, watching the fear and determination play across faces both physical and holographic. They'd come so far since the first attacks, former rivals now working together, old grudges set aside in the face of extinction. The Drachnid think they're coming to end this war, she said, her quiet voice somehow cutting through the chaos. They're wrong. They're coming to lose it. She gestured, and the holographic display expanded to show the entirety of human space. For 6 months, we've been fighting exactly as they expected: hit-and-run attacks, desperate defenses, guerrilla tactics. They think they've learned our patterns, adapted to our strategies. But everything, has been preparing for this moment. New holographic overlays appeared, showing hidden fleet positions, concealed defense platforms, and weapon systems disguised as civilian installations. Every raid by Captain O'Neill's Ghost Fleet wasn't just about disrupting their supplies. Every defense like Commander Chen's wasn't just about protecting our colonies. Every innovation from Dr. Rodriguez wasn't just about surviving. We've been gathering data, testing responses, learning their limits. The Mars representative leaned forward. You're saying all our attacks were reconnaissance, Tanaka finished. Expensive, dangerous reconnaissance, paid for in brave lives and precious resources. But now we know exactly how the Drachnid think, how they react, and most importantly, how they adapt. She brought up detailed analysis of Drachnid battle tactics, compiled from hundreds of engagements. They learn like machines, applying systematic solutions to every problem they encounter. When we hit their supply lines, they increased escorts. When we used chaos engines, they developed shields with rotating frequencies. When we attacked from stealth, they created overlapping sensor networks. And now they're coming with overwhelming force, the European Union's admiral noted. The logical response to everything we've done. Exactly. Tanaka smiled. They're doing exactly what we needed them to do: commit their entire fleet to a single, massive assault. Because while they were learning to counter our tactics, we were learning to counter their counters, General Santos finished, beginning to grin as he saw the strategy. The holographic display shifted again, showing new weapon designs, shield configurations, and battle plans that had been developed in secret across every human world and colony. Each one was specifically engineered to exploit weaknesses in the Drachnid's adaptations to human tactics. Their rotating shield frequencies. We've developed weapons that synchronize with the rotation, turning their defense against them. They're overlapping sensor networks. We've found ways to feed them data that makes sense to each individual sensor but creates chaos when combined. Every single countermeasure they've developed is a potential weakness, because they still think like machines. They can't conceive of an enemy that would deliberately lose battles to set up a greater victory. The Luna base representative spoke up. The industrial capacity we've been building in the asteroid belt will be ready in time, Tanaka confirmed. Every mining station, every fabrication facility, every research lab across human space has been working toward this moment. We're not just going to fight the Drachnid fleet, we're going to show them what happens when humanity truly unites against a common enemy. She looked around the chamber, meeting each representative's eyes in turn. The Drachnid built their empire on the assumption that advanced technology guarantees victory. They've never faced a species that could turn their own advancement into a weakness. They think they're coming to end a rebellion. Instead, they're walking into humanity's first coordinated counterattack. The chamber was silent for a long moment as the magnitude of the plan sank in. Then, one by one, the representatives began to nod. Resources were committed, final preparations were authorized, and humanity's trap began to close around an enemy that still didn't understand what they were truly fighting. As the meeting concluded, General Santos remained behind. "It's audacious," he said. "If even one part of this fails." "It won't," Tanaka replied with quiet confidence. "Because we have the one advantage the Drachnid can't comprehend, we're not fighting as individual nations or colonies anymore. We're fighting as humanity." And humanity, she smiled, looking at the battle plans that represented the combined innovation and determination of their entire species. Humanity doesn't know how to lose. The Sol system burned with artificial stars. 300 Drachnid capital ships emerged from quantum space in perfect formation, their massive hulls reflecting the light of humanity's home sun. Behind them came their support vessels, supply ships, and troop carriers, the full might of an empire that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. Aboard the EFS Defiant, Admiral Tanaka watched them arrive with the calm of a chess master seeing an opponent make exactly the move they'd anticipated. Commander Chen, Captain O'Neill, and Dr. Rodriguez stood with her on the bridge, each representing a different aspect of humanity's resistance that had led to this moment. Their broadcasting, Lieutenant Cruz reported from her station. System-wide, all frequencies. The holographic figure of the Drachnid Supreme War Leader materialized on the bridge. 9 feet tall, covered in iridescent scales that shifted between patterns of absolute authority in tested patience. "This has gone on long enough," it declared. "You have fought well, for primitives. But now you face the full might of the Drachnid Empire. Surrender, and your species may yet survive as our subjects." Tanaka smiled. "You still don't understand what you're fighting, do you? Scan the system. Tell me what you see." There was a pause as the Drachnid fleet sensors swept Sol space. Their perfect formation wavered slightly as the results came in. Where they had expected to find Earth's remaining military forces clustered around a homeworld in a desperate last defense, they instead found nothing. "If you're looking for our ships," Tanaka continued, "I'm afraid you're scanning the wrong things. Did you know humans once won a war by hiding an entire army inside a wooden horse? We've always had a fondness for that sort of thing." At her signal, the trap began to spring. Throughout the asteroid belt, what had appeared to be simple mining installations suddenly revealed themselves as massive weapon platforms. Civilian satellites transformed into defense stations. And most importantly, every piece of debris from 6 months of battles, disabled ships, fragments of destroyed vessels, scattered wreckage, began to move. "You see," Dr. Rodriguez's voice held the satisfaction of a scientist whose theory had been proven correct, "while you were adapting to our attacks, we were seeding the battlefield. Every destroyed ship carried dormant nanofabricators. Every piece of debris contained quantum cores. You thought you were forcing us to expend resources in failed attacks. Instead, we were building something interesting. The debris cloud came alive, billions of pieces combining and transforming like a swarm of mechanical insects. The Drachnid fleet found itself surrounded by rapidly assembling weapons and ships that had literally been hidden in plain sight, camouflaged as the wreckage of their own victories. "Ghost Fleet, you have permission to decloak," O'Neill transmitted. Hundreds of stealth ships shimmered into visibility, having maintained their positions for days using technology reverse-engineered from captured Drachnid vessels. They had been there the entire time, waiting. "And now," Commander Chen added, "about those countermeasures you developed for our chaos engines." Every hidden installation, reconstructed ship, and Ghost Fleet vessel activated their chaos engines simultaneously. But these weren't the same devices the Drachnid had learned to defend against. These had been specifically designed to interact with the enemy's new rotating shield frequencies, creating cascading resonances that turned their improved defenses into a vulnerability. The Drachnid fleet's formation broke as ships began firing at phantom targets, their perfect tactical algorithms overwhelmed by sensor data that seemed logical but led to impossible conclusions. Their overlapping defensive networks, designed to counter human stealth technology, instead amplified the chaos as each ship's sensors told a slightly different story about what was happening. "All units, execute Operation Checkmate," Tanaka commanded. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. The mighty Drachnid fleet found itself caught in a trap that turned its every strength into a weakness. When they tried to concentrate their forces, hidden quantum manipulators used their own Engine's power against them. When they attempted to retreat and regroup, they found their quantum drive signatures had been mapped and predicted, with human forces waiting at every possible destination. Most devastatingly, when they attempted to coordinate a response, they discovered that 6 months of analyzing their quantum communications had allowed humans to crack their unbreakable codes. Their own command network became a weapon against them as false orders and contradictory information spread confusion through their ranks. The Supreme War Leader's hologram flickered as its flagship took heavy damage. This is impossible. You're savages. Primitives. You can't have defeated our technology." "That's exactly why we could defeat it," Tanaka replied. "We're not bound by your assumptions about how warfare should be conducted. We don't limit ourselves to perfect solutions. Sometimes, the best technology isn't the most advanced, it's the most adaptable." The battle lasted less than 6 hours. When it was over, the greatest fleet in Drachnid history had been reduced to scattered groups of damaged ships trying to escape the gravity well of Sol. The handful that made it would carry word back to their empire of an enemy unlike any they had ever faced, one that turned defeat into victory, weakness into strength, and impossibility into opportunity. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Tanaka looked at her companions, the tactical genius, the guerrilla commander, the brilliant scientist, and through them saw the entirety of humanity's response to an overwhelming threat. They had faced extinction and responded not with despair but with innovation, not with surrender but with unprecedented unity. "Send word to Earth and all colonies," she ordered. "The Drachnid fleet is defeated. And let's make sure they understand, this isn't just a victory for Earth. This is proof of something we've always known: never tell humanity something is impossible. We take it as a challenge." The stars seemed to shine brighter over Earth that day, as if they too were celebrating the lesson that had been taught, that in the vast darkness of space, the most dangerous force isn't the most powerful technology, but the sheer determination and adaptability of the human spirit.